As a woman who likes reading novels where the main character is relatable through their gender expression, I fell upon 5 books in this past month that I've read, all involving powerful women protagonists who each exude strengths in various ways. Whether it was a wild and skilled fighter, an educated and defying doctor, or a wife during the witch trials in Boston, all these novels inspired me in some way or another, and dealt with an issue that was relatable through the protagonist's gendered issues dealing with the oppressive patriarchy. So here are 5 adult female-centric books that I've read this fall that I recommend. The first book is The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reid. If you're interested in seeing how Jewish folklore can be adapted into a fantastical world involving evil kings and heroic heroines, or maybe enemies to lovers between 2 characters on opposing sides of a fight that's bigger than themselves, or even a treacherous adventure with unlikely companions led by a ferocious and determined woman, this book is for you. The Wolf and the Woodsman is Ava Reid's debut novel, and if you happen to like Naomi Novik's Spinning Silver, or Catherine Arden's national bestseller The Bear and the Nightingale, or even Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas, you'll probably want to finish this book in one sitting. The novel follows Evike, a wolf girl from a forest-set pagan village, as she is sacrificed to the king for a blood ritual. The story is beautifully composed, seamlessly interweaving aspects of Jewish folklore into a fantasy world with a powerful female protagonist who is a bit rough around the edges. One of the main things that will draw me to a fantasy novel is powerful heroines that come in all different shapes and sizes. Not every feministic character has to be a strong and unbreakable woman, and Evike is no exception. She might be viewed as tough and fearless, but as the story unfolds, the hurt that makes up Evike's past reveals itself. Her dynamic personality makes her likable even when she's mean and hot-headed, which is a trait that's often associated with male characters and looked down upon when a woman exudes the same trait. The next book I read was the historical fiction novel called The Cape Doctor by E.J. Levy. Maybe a brave story about a woman who defies all odds but isn't a train killer is more appealing, someone we can see more within ourselves and how we think we'd act given the same situation. The Cape Doctor follows Margaret, soon to be Dr. James Miranda Barry, based on the true events in which this young woman takes on the persona of a man to become a doctor in the 17th century. Her story is more than interesting but inspiring and empowering. Not only did she become one of the best doctors in the Cape, but her identity wasn't discovered until her autopsy post-mortem. This story was so good that I ended up going down a rabbit hole, looking up all kinds of things about Dr. James Miranda Barry, their life, and exactly how they went about tricking everyone into thinking she was a man and becoming the best doctor in the Cape. The third novel I read was Hour of the Witch by Chris Bohjalen. He also wrote Midwives and The Flight Attendant, which are really popular novels. If medical studies mixed with hidden identity isn't the kind of historical fiction that interests you, maybe Hour of the Witch by Chris Bohjalen will. Following the events of Mary Deerfield, a young Protestant woman amongst the 17th century witch craze in Boston, Massachusetts. This thrilling tale is a page-turner as Mary realizes she must go to trial against her abusive husband and housemaid when she falls under the suspicion of witchcraft. Between chapters, Bohjalen includes real accounts of Mary's, as well as others who stood on her trials, testimonies in court, reminding us just how real this was for many women wrongly accused. This novel was paced really well, and it kept me on the edge of my seat as I was getting frustrated with each turn of the page at how people weren't taking Mary's word just because she was a woman. The fourth novel that I read was Catherine of Aragon, The True Queen, which is book 1 in the 6 Tudor Queens series by Alison Weir. Alison Weir takes a truly one-of-a-kind approach to telling the story of King Henry VIII's 6 wives in this 6-novel series. In the first book, which is Catherine of Aragon, we follow Henry's first wife, each chapter dedicated to depicting a few years of her life, beginning in 1501 with her arrival to England and ending with her death in 1536. Even if you're not very familiar with King Henry VIII's lineage or the history of England during this time, you shouldn't be deterred. Weir does an excellent job at informing the reader of the events and characters being depicted, as well as including a family tree in the front of all her books. Weir wonderfully captures the tragic and inner turmoil of Catherine's rule beside King Henry and what it was like to be a queen 500 years ago. Okay, my last book I read is kind of an odd one. It's called Hello Kitty Must Die by Angela S. Choi. It's definitely a strange pick, but because the novel had such a weird synopsis and odd title, I decided to give it a go. We follow Fiona Yu, who is a 28-year-old woman torn between traditional Chinese values and the American life. and in her turmoil, she decides to take her own virginity, which to her is the perfect solution to her battle between staying pure for marriage or living the carefree American life. But when she regrets her decision, she reunites with a friend from school when she sees him as her doctor. And if that doesn't sound strange enough, her friend introduces her to a new dark and exciting world while her dad sets her up on dates that keep dying mysteriously. This book felt bizarre and graphic, and Fiona's life is excruciatingly uncomfortable and honestly a little bit creepy. And I couldn't tear my eyes away. If you're a fan of dark humor, quick plot lines, and sociopathic rationalization, I would recommend giving this novel a try. It's a good Halloween pick too if you're wanting something that fits the bloody and overcast mood of October. It's not exactly scary, but it's unsettling and odd. It's a bit graphic and is laced with a lot of dark humor. It was a book that I likely wouldn't pick up, but just decided to give it a go, and if I didn't like it, I'd stop reading it, but I ended up not putting it down and reading it in one sitting. This book was strangely good, and I recommend giving it a try.